No, there's eyes. No, okay. Back on the trail. Back on the trail. Back on the trail. I came from this way. This way.
Thing called the skunk ape, and there's been a lot of sightings over many years of what they describe as a Bigfoot type of creature.
On a bright summer afternoon, something enormous walks into frame, turns to the camera, and does the one thing no hoaxer would dare to fake. Across 4 continents, hikers and researchers have aimed their lenses at the same impossible thing: a shape that surfaces in warm stone, in thermal heat, in orange fur where nothing should wear it. A handful of these clips are so strange that even lifelong skeptics have run out of easy explanations. These are the ones that refuse to behave the way a hoax should.
Oh, come on. It's right there. I have my glasses on. Look at that. Holy. Dinosaurs making. Oh crap, I busted. There you go.
The 30-year shadow. For almost 3 decades, a researcher known online as Timber Giant Bigfoot has poured his entire life into tracking down a creature most of the world insists does not exist. Thousands of hours of footage sit in his archive. Endless empty forests, false alarms, sounds with no source. Out of all of it, only about 5 minutes are believed to hold anything close to real evidence. And most of that came from a single afternoon. On September 15, 2013, he was moving through the forests of southern Ontario when a sharp, repeated knocking stopped him cold. Stone striking stone. It is a sound many researchers associate with Sasquatch, a deliberate signal echoing through the trees. He followed it. Roughly 100 feet away, half swallowed by shadow, something reddish-brown shifted into view. With the naked eye, he could barely make it out, a smear of darkness that refused to hold still. Through the camera screen, it was unmistakable, a shape that photographed almost rust-colored, ducking and rising behind the tree line, as though it knew exactly how far away to stay. Slipping back the instant the lens found it, it moved, vanished, then reappeared a few yards on. And then, without a single branch stirring, it was gone. When he finally reached the spot where it had been standing, the stone was still sitting in the dirt. He claims it was warm to the touch, resting exactly where something had been smashing it against the ground moments before. For a man who had spent his whole adult life waiting for a moment like this, it should have been the answer. Instead, it only deepened the question. The first of many, each clip that followed stranger, and harder to explain, than the last. The figure that wouldn't wear orange. In late October 2020, the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization received a clip from Logan Canyon, Utah. According to the witness, he and his son were driving through a popular rifle hunting area when a dark figure caught their attention, moving steadily along a creek bed below the road. At first, it looked like another hunter, but something refused to add up. During active rifle season, hunters are legally required to wear a certain amount of blaze orange, and this figure was covered head to toe in brown. There was somewhere to be, so the pair kept driving. Curiosity has a way of pulling people back, and a few days later, they returned, this time with members of the Rocky Mountain team. Using a 6-foot, 200-pound man standing in the same spot as a reference, they tried to reverse engineer the figure's size. Their rough math put it somewhere between 7 and 8 feet tall and nearly twice as wide as the man used to measure it. Something that broad, moving through open country in the middle of hunting season, without a scrap of orange, does not slot neatly into any ordinary explanation. That build, that impossible width, surfaces again and again in the strangest of these encounters. Not just tall, wrong-shaped, too broad to be a person in a suit, too deliberate to be a bear. The couple who almost drove past it. Some of the most talked about Sasquatch footage came not from researchers, but from people who simply stopped at the wrong turnout at the right time. On August 8, 2013, A couple named Bill and Wendy were driving home through part of coastal Canada when Wendy suggested a quick hike. About 200 feet into the woods, roughly 100 feet ahead, a large hairy figure stood among the trees. Bill's first instinct was the one nearly everyone has: bear. Something rooting around for food. Then came the head, not rounded the way a bear's is, but blocky and bulky on heavy shoulders. The longer it stood there, the less it resembled any animal he could name. The moment it moved off, so did they. Not every clip even comes with a witness. A few seconds of hunting cam footage from deep in the Ontario wilderness shows a large, hairy shape half concealed behind a cluster of trees, long enough to argue over, too brief to settle, the kind of thing that could be a Sasquatch or simply a bear scratching its back against a trunk. When there is just enough to see and never quite enough to know, the imagination does the rest. The ones on record. Not every witness is an anonymous username. Some arrived at these encounters carrying credentials that make the footage harder to wave away. In 1994, a former U.S. Forest Service patrolman named Paul Freeman reported spotting an entire family of Bigfoot in Washington's Blue Mountains. The video is shaky and rough, the image swimming as he tries to hold the camera steady and stay quiet.
See much up through here. I hear the brush popping and stuff. Oh, there he goes. Jesus.
Through the brush, a large shape moves, there and gone before the lens can settle. The quality is poor enough that skeptics dismiss it outright. Yet Freeman's career spent in exactly this kind of terrain is the reason researchers still return to it decades later. He knew that country, and he never wavered on what he believed he saw. A very different sighting came from a YouTuber known as Ericus Maximus. On April 5th, 2009, while riding an ATV through familiar country, he encountered what he calls the Beast of Gum Hill, by his account, his second run-in with it. And this time, a companion managed to film the moment. The footage shows the ATV crossing a creek as a large figure moves across the creek bed in the distance, drifting steadily away, unbothered by the machine and its rider. Two very different men, decades apart, both insisting on the same impossible thing. But eyes play tricks, and rough, shaky footage invites easy doubt. The sightings that came next were captured a different way. In the dark, in heat, where a warm body has nowhere left to hide. Two heads in the dark. Sasquatch is usually treated as a strictly North American mystery, yet nearly identical creatures have been reported on the other side of the planet. In Australia, the oldest group dedicated to investigating them is the Australian Yowie Research Group, and one of their expeditions produced footage still argued over today. On April 2nd, 2012, a four-person team traveled into the Gold Coast hinterland. 2 days in, they made base camp inside Springbrook National Park, the rainforest pressing close and black beyond the reach of the firelight, alive with the constant low static of insects and unseen movement. After dinner, one researcher, Duke Bingham, slipped away from the noise of camp to practice with a new thermal camera. Just before midnight, his radio crackled. He had something. Roughly 50 meters out, a large head was peeking around a tree stump, a warm shape glowing white-hot against the cold black of the scrub, unmistakable in a way the naked eye could never manage. He steadied the camera and zoomed, and in that instant, the picture changed everything. There was not one heat signature out there. There were two, massive and silent, standing close together, the second resolving into focus beside the first, as though it had been there the entire time, waiting to be noticed. The figures looked too small in the frame. Bingham made a split-second decision. Stop recording, reset the zoom, pull them in closer, capture the single shot that would finally settle years of argument. It was a mistake he would never get the chance to undo. In the seconds the camera was down, both shapes moved. When he raised it again, the scrub was empty. No sound, no branch snapping, no retreating heat bleeding away through the trees the way a fleeing animal would leave it. Whatever had been standing there had simply stepped out of the world between one breath and the next, and the one frame that might have proven it went with them. Measured afterward against the surrounding foliage, the pair came in between 8 and 9 feet. Not a number anyone on that team wanted to sit with, alone in the dark. two of them standing shoulder to shoulder and gone before a single clean shot could be captured. An entire expedition can hinge on a window that narrow, and this was the window that closed. Heat doesn't lie the way eyes do, and it would go on to produce some of the most convincing and most disputed evidence in the entire field. For anyone who watches the tree line a little longer after footage like this, subscribing is the surest way the next impossible clip finds its way here. Then, back into the dark. Heat on the Ridge. The night before Halloween, in 2013, brothers John and Joel Brown were sitting outside their rural Washington property when a soft tapping started up directly behind them. Strange activity had been building around the place for over a year. Noises without a cause, the sense of being watched from the tree line, and this time they were ready, having borrowed a thermal camera from a research group. John swept the field, past a restless herd of cows in the neighboring pasture. A single distinct heat signature stood apart from the rest. Unsure how to work the unfamiliar device under pressure, and unwilling to lose the sighting to a fumbled setting, he handed it to Joel. And in those few lost seconds, exactly the way it had happened to Bingham on the far side of the world, the figure moved. By the time Joel was recording, it had repositioned roughly 120 feet out, only its upper half rising over the ridge, a bright column of heat where none should have been, tall and upright, and watching the two of them as steadily as they were watching it. A scale pole later put it at least 7 feet tall and 4 feet wide. Some suggested a cow had strayed from the herd, but a cow's ears show clearly on thermal, twin points of warmth on either side of the skull, and this shape had none. Years earlier, a very different kind of researcher chased the same signatures with far less caution. In the 1980s, self-styled Bigfoot hunter Robert Dodson drew equal parts admiration and criticism for baiting Sasquatch rather than tracking them. On September 16, 2014, he left a mixture of fruit and meat in his Oklahoma research area. Around 9:30 that night, scanning the tree line, he caught a pair of glowing eyes hovering near the bait, low and patient, throwing his own light back at him out of the dark. They did not blink like a startled animal, and they did not bolt. What followed was a tense, drawn-out game of hide and seek, the eyes blinking out, then reappearing just beyond the edge of the light.
Don't do this at home. Whatever you do.
Never letting him close the distance. That ended with Dodson doing what most researchers know better than to do, charging directly at it, alone, into the dark. When he finally backed off and marked the height where the eyes had been staring back, the marker sat around 8 feet off the ground. A deer, skeptics said. But a deer's eyes do not float 8 feet in the air. The colors that don't belong. Some clips earn their strangeness not through what the creature does, but through how it looks, in ways genuinely hard to write off as a costume. The first has no known origin at all. No name, no date, nothing beyond a steep California hillside. The footage shows a figure barreling down the slope at a pace that looks reckless for terrain that's severe, and what stops people mid-scroll is its color. A vivid, almost unnatural orange, nothing like the muted browns and blacks of nearly every other sighting. It pauses only to grip a small tree as it descends, steadying itself for a heartbeat, then releases and keeps moving downward, either fleeing something or racing toward it. Skeptics have gone frame by frame. Their strongest point is oddly specific. For a creature with such famously long arms, it barely uses them. And the movement looks a little too human, yet the size gives even them pause. Whatever descends that hillside dwarfs the trees it brushes past, and it never once stumbles on ground, steep enough to send a grown man sliding. The color only deepens the problem. Too strange to be real, too committed to be a joke, since no hoaxer trying to convince anyone would choose a shade that screams fake from the very first frame. The second comes from Tennessee. Scott Carpenter was a sincere, if eccentric, outdoorsman who dabbled in amateur Sasquatch research, and most of his recordings were forgettable. Then, in 2012, his phone's rear camera caught a strange, pale, white-colored figure crouched behind a wall of foliage, low to the ground, half hidden, and holding a stillness no animal caught unaware ever manages. As though it understood exactly what a camera was and had decided not to move for it. On its own, the clip might be easy to dismiss. Set against his reputation for never capturing anything worthwhile, it became one of his most discussed videos ever. White, orange, colors that appear on nothing that's supposed to be out there. China's Yeren, the reddish-brown wild man of Hubei's mountain forests, and Missouri's Momo, a 7-foot foul-smelling figure with glowing orange eyes, are both painted across centuries of accounts as territorial and dangerous. Whatever the truth behind them, some of the figures caught on camera clearly want no audience at all, and aggression is far from the strangest thing on record. A few of these figures have been filmed moving in a way that does not just defy expectation, it defies what a body that size should be able to do at all. Too fast to be human. Everything to this point assumes Bigfoot is flesh and blood, an undiscovered animal and nothing more. A fringe within the fringe argues something stranger. One of its more credible voices is a wildlife photographer named Angie, who has kept a detailed diary of Sasquatch activity on her property since 2008, documenting it year after year while sharing only a small handful of clips she truly believes are genuine. The strangest was recorded on January 15th, 2016. Walking outside, filming behind her as she moved, her camera caught a figure crossing the frame at a speed that simply does not match a creature of that size. It does not lumber. It does not run the way a large animal runs, all weight and effort. It blurs, covering ground in a way that has left even careful observers reaching for explanations with nothing to do with biology. And it is that impossible smear of speed, more than any single frame, that pushed her toward the idea that whatever crossed her property may not be a simple flesh and blood animal at all. And it is not the only clip like it. In October 2022, a TikTok user posted footage that, according to the uploader, was captured by accident on a Snapchat account. A creature leaping from a tree in a single motion, gone almost before the eye can register it was ever there. Then there is the footage from a wedding photographer in Litchfield County, Connecticut, shot on a DSLR through a window after something was heard near the trash cans and assumed to be a bear. By the time the lens found it, the figure was already crossing a rural field with a strange swinging arm motion and a speed that racked up nearly 200,000 views and split its comment section clean in half between the certain and the convinced otherwise. The same impossible detail keeps returning. Something enormous, moving faster than anything that large has any right to move. The clip nobody can explain. Of all the footage that has surfaced over the years, one clip stands apart, the one even seasoned analysts hesitate to dismiss. It was reportedly filmed on Independence Day in the flat, ordinary light of a bright summer afternoon, the kind of setting that makes what happens next harder, not easier, to dismiss. A Bigfoot walks calmly into frame. It pauses, and then slowly, it turns its head and looks directly into the camera. A long, deliberate beat that seems to register the person filming, to measure the distance between them, to decide something. Then it does something no other clip in this entire collection shows. It bends, reaches down, and scoops up a smaller figure described as a baby, gathering it in against its body with a care that reads as unmistakably protective before turning to leave. The adult moves uneasily, glancing back over its shoulder again and again as it goes, keeping a nervous eye on the camera the whole way, as though aware it has been seen doing something it was never meant to be seen doing. The smaller shape reacts, clinging, then pushing away, then clinging again, the unmistakable back and forth struggle of something alive and unwilling. Some viewers swear faint expressions cross the adult's face, caution, wariness, something close to alarm. Others are certain the whole thing is computer-generated, too clean and too perfect to trust, and that uncertainty is exactly where the clip does its quiet damage. After thorough frame-by-frame breakdowns, the kind that expose most hoaxes within minutes, it remains one of the very few clips analysts have been unwilling to write off, not because they can prove it is real, but because they cannot prove it isn't. That is the thread running through every strange clip here. None is a confession. None closes the case. They sit in that narrow, maddening space between obvious hoax and undeniable proof, close enough to feel real, strange enough to keep millions watching the tree line a little longer than they should. More of the footage the mainstream keeps at arm's length surfaces here first. Subscribing is how the next one arrives, and somewhere in a frame filmed on a bright summer afternoon, a shape that was never supposed to exist glances back over its shoulder one last time, tightens its grip on something small and struggling and steps out of the picture, carrying with it the only answer anyone has ever come close to holding.